Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my week 27 reading wrap up. I read a very interesting mix of fanfics, rereading favorites, reading new releases, and reading some interesting choices. So I'm very excited to talk about it. I did read 10 books this week. It was another week where I had a lot going on. I went to a camp that I go to with my friends every year, and it's not a camp in tents. It is a family camp where there is a location where a bunch of families from all over Minnesota get together and hang out. And it was great, but I didn't get a ton of reading done. However, again, I did get through still 10 books, which I know is still better than it is for a lot of people. So I'm happy about it. And I got through a lot of books that are on my to-do list for the month. So first off, before we dive into all of those, of course, I want to say a huge thank you to my channel members and Patreons. And this week we have 3 new patrons to welcome. There is Zoe R, Amy Golke, and Chelsea Rohr, who have joined my Patreon, and I appreciate that so much. I'm going to continue to pitch that because, you know, this is my full-time job now, and every one of you who is willing to support that, even for a month at a time, helps me to continue to be able to do this. I am just coming up on my 90-day goal, and I'm planning to make a video about that to kind of update you on where we are with everything, but I'm super welcome. I have over 10 different videos that are exclusive to Patreon right now. That's growing every month. I add 3 or 4 to that, as well as fun behind the scenes stuff there. So let us go ahead and go into the books that I read, because like I said, I have some interesting things to say, and I know I say this every week, but I'm going to try to make this a little bit quicker than normal. I am having quite a bit of dental pain today, which is kind of frustrating because I went and got work done earlier this week, and the work that they did hurt more than where my teeth were at before, because they were doing prep for a crown, and so my mouth is very sore from that prep work, and so talking is not on the top, but the show must go on. I just probably will only get 1 video recorded today, and hopefully we'll be able to film more in the beginning of next week. So let's go ahead and dive in. As usual, I have my notes right here, so if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes about the book, just so that I can make sure I get everything accurate. So I started out the week reading Me Malfoy by Ampersand. This was a novella-length fic done by, well, as I said, it's done by Ampersand. And I was, a couple of weeks ago, digging through AO3, going through some of my favorite fics, and I was also looking up some of my favorite fanfic writers and seeing what other things they had. So Ampersand is the fanfic writer who does Contradictions, which, you know, is one of my favorite fics. And they had this Me Malfoy, which was a consensual non-consent, novella-length thing, and it has Hermione and Draco in a scenario where they really have just kind of been at each other's throat for a while, and Draco says something about Hermione just needing a really good fuck for her to relieve some tension, and she literally says something like, "Make me Malfoy, just do it." So they enter into this consensual non-consent scenario, and it was very spicy, it was very fun. It was a 5 on the spice rating because it's basically only spice in this, I think it would probably translate to about 150-page story. And I gave it a 4-star because it's always tough when they abruptly end. Even though I knew that's what I was getting into because it was a shorter thing, I still wish it had maybe ended a little bit smoother than it did. But yeah, I really loved it. And the only real trigger warning is the consensual non-consent, so be prepared for that. Next, I read Notice by Kay Webster. This book, let me scoot over so I should have done that from the beginning. This was a viewer recommendation as well as one that I have had on my own TBR for a long time. I got it when it was free. Kay very regularly shifts through her collection and has different books be for free or for you know, an extreme sale. And this was a stalker recommendation that was highly recommended for me to read. And this one is actually the heroine. Her name is Violet. She is an assistant for her boss, whose name is Gray, and he literally has like ignored her all the years that she's worked there. And finally she gets sick of it, so she puts in her 2-week notice. And now Gray, who is definitely have some psychopathic tendencies, which are normally all focused on his work, he now is taking notice of Violet, which is where the title comes from. And he goes from 0 to 1,000 miles per hour very quickly. So yeah, there also are, I'm going to list all the trigger warnings for this, but there also are some mental health, specifically having to do with hoarding and agoraphobia, that deal with Gray's family members, that honestly made me more uncomfortable than some of the trigger warnings. But I mean, you don't see that representation a ton in romance novels, so I do appreciate it for that. But this book definitely made me very squeamish because I've forgotten how far K goes sometimes. Like, it's interesting. So yeah, so there's hoarding in here, violence. There is dubious consent, non-consent happening with the hero. Particularly some things where she is sleeping and he does some things around her. Not quite somnophilia, but it's creepy. And then there is rape and sexual assault that is not by the hero, that is in memories that the heroine has, because she does have a very traumatic past where there were drugs, she was in an abusive relationship, and there was some forced prostitution that was happening. These, I'm not saying they are not depicted, but it is in like a flashback scenario. So there's that. And any reason not to recommend, I'm saying like this book made me pretty squeamish in a lot of aspects. So there was that. Then I was absolutely blessed enough to get to reread The Takeover, because one of my patrons finally picked The Takeover as their book. So this is actually my copy, because I am I annotated my own copy first, because I'd actually started annotating this a while ago, and then I wasn't quite in the mood for a reread, so I stopped, because with The Takeover being my favorite contemporary romance ever, I very much like to pace whenever I reread this book, because I don't ever want to overdo it, because it's my favorite book. And so I'm very protective of how much I read it. But I was hoping a patron would pick this book eventually so that I could annotate it. So yes, I am annotating my copy, which I literally cried in. And then I will transfer my notes to my patron's copy. And she was very sweet. She messaged me. She's like, I would love to have a copy that had your tear stains in it. And I was like, when I copy my notes over, maybe I will cry again, because it happens. But if you don't know, just in case, although I'm very happy that this book was having a bit of a resurgence, and it actually made it back onto the top 10 list, because TL announced the blurb for the do-over, and the pre-order is available. The do-over will be coming in August, so I am stalking NetGalley for an arc of the do-over, just waiting for it to go up. All the books in this series have been download, like on demand, basically. And that's how I first read The Takeover 2 years ago. But anyway, in case you don't know, this is a woman who is 38. She's a single mother. She has 3 sons, ranging from 18 to like 10, I think. And she has been running her husband's business for the last 5 years because he died. So she's also a widow. And Tristan Miles is one of the Miles brothers. He is the acquisitions member of the family. Miles Media has offices in 3 different countries, and they take over smaller media companies. And so Tristan, you know, gets the call that Anderson Media is kind of circling the drain a little bit, and so he gets sent in to try to buy it, and he comes in with a very cocky attitude, and Claire is like, fuck off, this is my husband's business, I am running it for my sons, I'm not selling to you. And he's like, I like how feisty this woman is, and also you should really sell me your business. Fast forward, she goes to a business conference in France, and he happens to be one of the people speaking there, and they end up having a weekend-long fling together, which is very sexy, very beautiful. Claire hasn't been with anyone since her husband, and Tristan, she describes him as fun. He's the sexiest man she's ever met. but he's also funny and fun, and they have a great time. And it's only ever supposed to be a weekend nightstand, but when they get back to their real lives, he's not ready to let Claire go, and Claire's fully ready to go back into mom mode, and Tristan is going to pursue her. And Claire is very honest, where she says, this isn't just me. I have 3 hearts that are connected to mine, and if you want to be with me, my sons have to love you too. And Tristan, the takeover king, is ready to make it happen. And there are a lot of struggles that we run into. I mean, obviously the main trigger for this one is going to be grief. And I know that the conflict in this book can frustrate people. When I look at reviews, which I don't always look at for the takeover, but actually there was a very popular booktuber, I'm not going to say, it's not a romance booktuber, it was a booktuber, who gave this book 1 star because of some of the actions of Claire. And I just couldn't, like, I mean, I know this is my favorite book, so I'm extremely biased, but I just thought it was such a shallow, like, comment to make about this book. And everyone's opinion is fine, but again, I'm biased. This is my favorite book. I'm going to defend it when I'm on my channel. I'm not going to go in someone else's space and do that. But someone literally made comments about the fact that Tristan isn't a great guy just because he appreciates Claire's stretch marks, which, number one, that's coming from a place of privilege of not having stretch marks, whether because, you know, like, I've never had a baby and I have stretch marks all over my body. I was a very heavy woman and now I'm less so, and I have stretch marks. And for Tristan, who is just so into Claire for many reasons besides just her body, he appreciates all those things about her because he sees her cesarean scar and her stretch marks as, like, you've lived, you know, like, none of the women you've been with have lived like Claire has, you know. And I just think that that's a big reason why this book connects with so many women who are, and I'm not saying older, but are not in their 20s, let's just say. And anyway, again, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion, but I just feel like TL was doing so much with this book, and whether she even meant it to be that or it just happened in how the story came together, this book will always be on a favorites list. And, like, in my opinion, it's just so well done, because even though the conflict in this book is so painful, and you look at Claire and you're like, Claire, why the fuck are you making these decisions? What's amazing about how TL Swan does it is Claire herself is thinking that. When there's the 3rd act situation in this book, she's saying things with her mouth, and in her head, she's like, what am I doing? I'm ruining everything. But she can't help it, because grief comes out of you at different times. And one of the reasons this book first ever caught my heart is that my aunt died very suddenly, very tragically. And only a year and a half or so later, my uncle started dating again, because being alone was very hard for him. But he also, you know, was worried about how the family and his children would feel about him falling for someone else. And, you know, now it's 7 years later, and he's been married again now for 2 years, and we love his second wife. We love her. We've welcomed her right into our family. But it was very difficult for him to decide to want to date again, and he felt like it was too soon. Now, for Claire, it's been 5 years, but she still feels like it was too soon because this was the love of her life. And again, I know I'm making personal parallels, but that's why this book means so much to me, is the personal aspects that connect. And my uncle was with my aunt since he was 19. They were married for 34 years. And that's not something you just get over, you know? So anyway, this is a personal favorite. Obviously, this was 6 stars. I loved reading this for my patron, and I'm glad that I now have this one annotated and I can share my thoughts. I mean, this book is very heavily annotated, by the way. It's awesome. Okay, next I read, or listened to, I should say, a couple of audio arcs. So the first one was Side Squeeze by Lydia Michaels. I've been lucky enough to listen to most of the audios for this series. This series is a small town romance. This one specifically is a second chance romance, but it's a second chance from like a high school love. And this one is, let me see, Harrison, who is the brother of the heroine from the last book. And their father died of a heart attack. And he was a horrible father who's actually very emotionally and a little bit physically abusive. And whereas Mariella, who, again, the last book was about her, where she stayed and tried to, you know, be there for her father, even though he was a guy that did not, like, he was not a great guy. And she felt the town loved her dad and that she was an outsider there. Harrison, he made a run for it. Before he even graduated high school, he left and moved away. And Mariella was someone that he was seeing. And she's actually the sister of the heroine's husband from the one before this. So these two, their siblings are married. And they see each other again when Harrison has to come to town for the funeral of his father, because the sister makes him. And then his sister kind of like bows out of the stuff because the father left everything to Harrison, but Harrison was making his sister deal with everything because he didn't want to come back. And she's like, I'm not doing it because my mental health is more important than digging through this stuff. And when Harrison comes back to town, he ends up interacting with Mariella again, and they have like a one-night stand. And then we see if Harrison is going to stick around in the small town again. So as always, these books are very like poignant and they really hit at your heart. But this one was a 4-star for me, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And the trigger warnings, there's a little bit of the grief, but we don't see a lot of the abuse from the past, so there aren't really trigger warnings. All right. Then I had an audio arc of The Devil You Know by Elizabeth O'Rourke. And this is actually the third book in the like Devil series by her. I had previously read Waking Olivia for my patrons, and I wanted to get like a free audiobook for this, so I signed up for the arc. I didn't read the 2 previous books, but based on some of my friends' recommendations, they said that I should be okay reading the third one. I am debating whether I'll read the first 2. I think I probably will. The first one was actually a viewer recommendation anyway, so I want to read it. And also, most of my friends did like the first 2 better anyway, so that's encouraging. Because this book, it's funny what my feelings are for it, because I read this like all in one sitting, and I initially was giving it 5 stars because I had a really great listening experience with it. And this is lawyers. It is a workplace, enemies to lovers. They both work at the same law firm. They end up getting given a joint case where they're supposed to work together. The heroine, Gemma, she's been trying to get a promotion at this place for quite a while. She wants to be made partner so that she can kind of infiltrate the boys club that is this law firm. And she's never been able to do it. And she continues to get, looked down to by the older partners and just kind of like not given proper respect. And then we have Ben, who is a partner there. And I'll just tell you straight up, like, he has kind of been secretly pining after our heroine for quite a while. Now, while they're working on this joint case together, they end up having a enemies with benefits situation. And the heroine is always very adamant that she's not going to get married because she comes from kind of a traumatic family background. And not like traumatic's the wrong word, but very messy and complicated. And her father, he was a lawyer and he was rich. And when he divorced her mother to marry his, like, a much younger woman, he screwed her mother out of everything because he had better lawyers and her mother had nothing. She was his, like, kept wife, basically. So she didn't have a job. She didn't have any skills. She never went to school. She'd been with her husband all that time. And when he left her, he stripped her of everything. And so Gemma has always carried a lot of anger against that her wonderful mother is living the way she's living, and Gemma's father it's him and his wife, and they're still rich. So Gemma wants to also be able to provide for her mother and also get revenge for, like, in the cases she does for women like her mother. But anyway, her and Ben end up working together. It becomes an enemies to lovers thing. So she's very distrustful of him too, because she's like, well, we were enemies and this and whatever. And again, I initially gave this 5 stars. And then I talked to Crystal about it. And I will say that, like, Crystal changed my mind about some certain things. And I'm going to keep, like, her full opinions to myself, because she will, I'm sure, talk about this book. And you can get it from her. So check out Crystal's Bookish Life. But there were a few things she was pointing out to me that, like, I noticed them while I was reading it. But because I was just kind of pushing my way through this book and I was, like, searching for that end finish line, I wasn't really soaking a lot of them in, and it wasn't really bothering me too much. Although this did have a heroine who, kind of the main things that I'll point out now is that she talks a tough game. She wants to become partners. She wants to do these things. She does none of those things in this book. Not a single one of her goals that she had at the beginning does she have at the end. The hero, who I did love, and I think a big part of why I gave it 5 stars initially was Ben, because I really liked him, and I liked that he was secretly pining for her. I liked that he was obsessed with her shoes, and he would get very grumpy when she wore very beautiful shoes because he would be thinking about doing naughty things with her, and that wasn't great. So, but I liked that a lot. And, but yeah, like, the hero literally fixes everything in the end of this book. The heroine doesn't do anything. So for her being this ball buster that she's supposed to be, she accomplishes nothing. And I just don't understand that when we search back. So I didn't put it lower than a 4, but it probably is lower than a 4 for me. And it is a 3 on the spice scale. All right. Then I got to do a reread of Slave to Sensation by Nilani Singh. This was also picked by a patron. I hadn't read this book in 2 years. I had binged this series during the beginning of quarantine, and I really loved it back then because a lot that the changelings have as part of their society, as part of their pack, is something called skin privileges, and that touch and physical proximity and communication is very important to the health of their pack. And Lucas, as the head, he's the alpha of the Dark River pack, and they are leopards and big cats. And he is going to be doing a deal with the Psy, and Sasha Duncan gets assigned to be the person that's working with him. Sasha has some secrets that she's hiding because there's something that the Psy are all programmed by, which is called the silence, which is they're not supposed to have any emotions because they have these different telepathic and, like, abilities that they're able to do. And it was noticed many years ago that the Psy, when they were very emotional, they could misuse their gifts. And so they are taught from a very young age to shut off all emotion, and it's called the silence. Now, Sasha has been having issues with this, and she's finding that the more time she spends around Lucas, who she's extremely attracted to, who she feels this pull to, who his entire pack is touching and loving, and they are full of emotion, she finds herself in danger of breaking silence, which not only would be bad because she would be reprogrammed or killed if it was found out, but it's just not good for her mind at all to have that much stimulants when she hasn't had it before. So they're also trying to solve, there is a serial killer who has been kidnapping young changelings and torturing them and then killing them, and the Psy have been ignoring this because they say that no Psy can become serial killers without emotion. Well, it's like a lot of serial killers don't have emotion to begin with. So this was a wonderful reread. This is, of course, a 5-star for me. This is only a 2 on the spice scale, but there's a lot of steam in this book. There's a lot of sexual tension between Sasha and Lucas right from the beginning, and the build-up to them finally being together was fantastic. I loved it. I love the Psy Changeling books, even though I've only read, probably like half of them total. I love it. Okay, then I read another fic. I read Something in the Way She Moves, and this is by Snape's Goddess, who is another fanfic writer that I previously liked. I've read a couple books by this fic writer before. I think I read Snape and Hermione, and I also read a Lucius and Hermione, I think. So this one was a Draco and Hermione, and it was delightful. It did end up getting a little bit boring, so I did give this one 4-star, but I'll tell you what it was because it was a lot of fun. So I can't remember how many years after Hogwarts this is, but Draco is a business owner. He actually owns quite a few businesses, but his favorite business he owns is this small little bar that is magical, and he also plays in with the band once a week. He's a drummer with them. I think he does piano too, because I think that he's playing that at one point. I can't remember. But Hermione, she happens to just stumble into this bar. She doesn't know that he owns it, and she ends up sitting at the bar and realizing who's playing. And after his set, he comes up and says hello to her, and they end up having a one-night stand together. And then Draco decides to pursue Hermione and date her. So it really is just like, it is a one-night stand that turns into more, and it was a lot of fun. Like I said, this one I think could have actually been a bit shorter because it drug on just a little too long, and there wasn't necessarily a lot going on in it. But it was a lot of fun, so I gave it 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. Then I read This Changes Everything by Jennifer Ashley. This is a book that I was given as a gift from Lisa Brown. It was on my wish list, though, because I wanted to try some of Jennifer Ashley's contemporaries. This is book 1 in the McLaughlin brothers, and this one is only novella length. It's like 130 pages. And Zach McLaughlin, it is his brother Ryan's wedding, I believe, and he ends up re-meeting up with Abby, who is the maid of honor, and he used to know her when they were younger, and he hasn't seen her, and now there's a wedding, and they have a one-night stand, and then they end up dating after the one-night stand. It goes from 0 to Will You Marry Me in about like a 2-week time period, so it was just a little bit bonkers. But it was cute, I guess. It was nice to see a contemporary story from Jennifer Ashley. I've only read her historicals and then her paranormal, so it wasn't horrible. But I did give this one 3 stars, and it was only a 2 on the spice scale. Then I read an arc of The Crash by Skye Warren and Amelia Wilde. This is an arc and a prequel it's a book going to be in the Midnight Dynasty. I've actually been wanting to read more of the Midnight Dynasty again. I've read like 10 books in the Midnight Dynasty, and I want to read some more because there's actually like 34 currently, and there's more coming. And this one, I thought this was part 1 of a duet, so I signed up for this. And then I saw another book coming just 2 weeks later that was by the same authors, and it had like the same blurb, and I was very confused. So this book that's going to be coming out is called Force of Nature, and it's going to be like a Tarzan retelling. So The Crash is actually a prequel novella, and it's about Carter Morelli and June Porter. And June is going to be going to Africa to take photographs, and Carter, who is a professor, but also, of course, he's part of the Morelli family, which if you've read the Midnight Dynasty, they're the mafia family in this business family. And so he also has some undercover things he's doing as well, but he's a professor of, like, I think it's botany or something like that, but he also can fly a plane, and so he's supposed to be flying her to Africa to take pictures, and he's also going to be doing some undercover stuff as well. Well, when they are about halfway into their trip over the Pacific Ocean, their plane, something goes off, and they crash land onto this small island, and then they discover that they're not alone, and this wasn't an accident, and that's the end. So there's only about 90 pages of this. There's only one kiss that happens in this book. When he's like trying to get her to stop freaking out, he like kisses her. So that's all that there was to this. I didn't dislike it, so I did rate this pretty highly. I'm not a fan of when authors do this. Like, why are they putting out this prequel and it only comes out a week and a half before the other book does? So I just don't understand it. Like, why did you make this why did I have to sign up for 2 books to review when I can't imagine that Force of Nature will be like 500 pages long. So why didn't you just put the novella in it when I'm sure eventually you'll have it as one? I just get really tired of that. And I honestly feel like Midnight Dynasty, part of the reason I got irritated with them before, is they have quite a few trilogies that are all the same couple, and they spread it out over 3 books. There are some books in the series that are a different couple every one. Like I think the Pembroke Academy is, you know, and then Lessons in Sin is one book. But like Gianna Darlings, I hated that it was a duet. I didn't even read the second half because I was irritated. Like the Cinderella trilogy, didn't love that. It was 3. Like I get so sick of authors writing one book and splitting it into 3. I get irritated. So there's my spiel. But like I said, I did rate this pretty highly because I was super intrigued. I was just pissed that it was literally 90 pages. And now you've broken that momentum by having them be separated. But I did give it 4.5 stars. And there we go. And then the last book that I read is The Throne of the Horde King by Zoe Draven. And this is the 6th and final book in the Horde Kings of Dakar. Nice thick beast. This one is about Eric, who of course we don't have his POV on the back because it's in the heroine's POV. But he goes to the ancient temple of the priestesses. We've heard about the priestesses in previous books because there's this fog that is spreading throughout the planet of Dakar. And it is a killer. Like it can kill people. It is causing death in the land. Things aren't growing like they should. It is bringing destruction. And in previous books, the different Horde Kings have been reaching out to the priestesses and they haven't been hearing anything back. So Eric, he decides he's going to go there and figure it out. And when he gets there, the head goddess, she knows more than she says. And then we have Kara, who she isn't a priestess. She's actually a half Dakar, half human woman who has lived at the temple all of her life, but she's not a priestess. And she has the gift of Kakari, who is like the goddess of this, you know. And she has the gift, and she's been getting visions about this hero her whole life. So when she sees him for the first time, she's like, oh my God, this man must be my destiny somehow because I've been dreaming of him all this time. And then she actually gets a vision about there's these stones that they need to help defeat the fog. So she wants to go with him to help solve it. He doesn't want to bring her with. And also her mother, who's one of the priestesses, who's not her mother, but like her adopted mother, doesn't want her to go. And our heroine is trying to make a deal with the hero to get him to go. And they try to go on that adventure. So I had read a good chunk of this before I went to camp. And then it took me a little while to finish it while I was at camp, but I did. And the thing is, the first 50% of this book was very well paced. There's very good tension between the hero and the heroine. And we were working on getting these stones that we need to defeat the fog. And then there's some stuff that happens in the plot that really brought the story to a grinding halt. And it very much, we were then dealing with some conflict that was just super annoying to me, and not just me. And then we rushed through the ending at the end. And this is the last book in the series. And I feel like we should have cut out that middle part of plot that we didn't need, or we needed it to be faster so that we could spend more time with destroying the big bad, which is this fog, which has been the big bad for a lot of the books. So I was just a little disappointed in that. And so I ended up giving this last book in the series a 4-star. And it was a 3 on the spice scale. I did love that our heroine was half Dakar, and I still loved a lot about this book. This book is really long, guys. It's over 500 pages, and there was parts of it that were very frustrating to me. Now, Zoe has said that there will be a spin-off series for this that will start coming out next year, and she has another series, The Brides of Kalor, which will be an alien series coming soon. So, you know, the spin-off series is going to be like take place further in the future, and I'm sure there'll be different struggles, but I will still always read Zoe Draven's books. This is not like a failure to me in any means. I just didn't love all the extra things put in with this, but this series was great. I can't wait for like the audiobook for this one. I'll probably reread it when that comes, but I just love what she's done. It was great. So yeah. So there we go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I definitely did talk a little less than normal. Sorry for the soreness where I'm having to talk a little slower today, but hopefully that will be better soon. But my mouth just really hurts today. So anyway, thank you so much to my patrons and channel members for supporting me. Make sure you check out my links down below if you're interested in supporting this channel and what I do here full time. It means so much to me. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.